Cyberpunk 2077, probably one of the most hyped games in existence, and I gotta say, I was anticipating it as well. I knew about the game when it was just a teaser trailer back in 2012 or 13, and I gotta say, when I first saw gameplay of it, I was definitely interested in playing it. And you may think that my expectations were really high like everybody else's, but let me tell you what my expectations were. You see, CD Projekt Red really impressed me with The Witcher 3. That game left a really strong impression on me. So I was simply expecting that Cyberpunk 2077 would do the same, or maybe even top The Witcher 3. And after playing it, I gotta say, I don't think it topped The Witcher 3, and in some regards, I think The Witcher 3 does a better job. And I think Cyberpunk 2077 could be so much more. Now, before I get into it, let me just say that the footage you're seeing is not my own, because all my footage got fucking corrupted. So I've opted to use footage from different sources, which I'll link in the description. So my apologies for that, it really saddens me too, but it's not really going to affect what I have to say about this game. Now, you've probably watched multiple reviews talking about things like the visuals and the bugs and the sound design and the crafting and the items and the shooting and the driving and so on. And I'm sure you've especially watched videos talking about the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game, which have turned out really fucking bad, sadly. But for this video, I want to focus on two main topics that are important to me: the story and the subject of choice. Now, I find the world, story, and characters really interesting. You take the role of V, a mercenary with a past of your choosing. You end up taking a job to steal a biochip, and that biochip ends up inside your head when things go wrong. But what happens is that it plants a personality construct inside your head, and the personality trapped inside your head is that of terrorist and rocker boy Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves. The problem is, though, is that he's simultaneously taking over your mind and body, killing you in the process. So yeah, shit's pretty heavy, and I gotta say I find it engaging due to the events that are unfolding as well as the characters. And it's sort of structured like The Witcher 3, where you have a main objective to look towards, but you have multiple quests to do, and in doing so you end up in different parts of the city, meeting new characters and doing missions for them, which introduces you to side quests as well, and I gotta say the side quests are really interesting too. In fact, I find some of them more interesting than the main plot line as well. You might be investigating someone's death, a serial killer, or uncovering some dark conspiracy. There's a lot of cool stuff that ends up happening here. I like the characters as well, and they can start to develop, growing on you. You know, you look at one character and you think, wow, this guy's just an asshole. And then you start to play more, things start to open up, and then you think to yourself again, like, okay, this guy's still an asshole, but I see where he's coming from. And that's the thing, when a new character was introduced and then they had side missions for me, I was always willing to do them because I really wanted to engage myself in their stories because I found them that interesting. Now, as much as I like the world and the story and the characters, there's a problem I have, and it has to do with the subject of choice and being able to roleplay your own character. Now, don't get me wrong, the game does give you a choice in what your playstyle is. If you want to be a net-running assassin or some powerful brute, you can go ahead and do that. But I'm talking about being able to roleplay as your own character, you know, your motivations and your dialogue choices and all that. And I find in terms of that, the game can feel pretty bare, linear, and predetermined, and quests don't really branch out that much. And the thing is that CD Projekt Red could have avoided this. They had a huge chance to do so, and it has to do with the character you're playing. You're not some highly established character like Geralt of Rivia, who has like a fucking century-old history of being a monster hunter and having relations with all sorts of people across the land and going through all sorts of ordeals. Instead, you are V, a mercenary. This was a chance for it to just be a clean slate. And yes, V does have a past depending on the life path you choose, but the thing is that even though you can choose your past, there's not a lot of choice in the present and the future. Don't get me wrong, you have choices you can make in dialogue that can have certain consequences, but it doesn't really change the way the story plays out that much. It doesn't really branch into something new. The story can play out very similarly no matter the life path and choices you make. Like, there's consequences where, like, okay, this character dies, but the thing is that it doesn't change how the world perceives you, and the story continues just the same. Now, people see things like, oh, but wait, there's 6 endings and there's like a secret one on top of that. But here's what happens. You have 3 choices you can make at the end of the game, which changes how the last mission plays out. And then when you finish that mission, you have 2 choices you can make, which affects the ending you get. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that there was a possibility for even more outcomes. A chance for players to really have their own unique stories to tell and experience. but instead of it feeling like you have a story to tell, it's a story being told to you. And the thing is that V as a character feels predefined. You know, you can choose what V's gender is. You can be a female or male, and you can choose your life path. You can be a nomad, a corpo, or a street kid. But even though you have those choices, you don't really have a lot of choice in what your motivations actually are and what kind of character you're playing. And there was a huge opportunity to do so because, I mean, think about it. It takes place in 2077 in Night City, and there's all these corporations like Militech, Biotechnica, Kang Tao, and there's gangs like the Valentinos, Voodoo Boys, Moxes, Animals, and so on. Yet they're not used to their full potential. The one that's at center stage is Arasaka, but the thing is that everything else just seems to be tossed aside. They're either used for portions of the main missions and side missions, or maybe they're mentioned in gigs, but then that's it. They're just there to exist in the background, never to really be interacted with. Which is a shame because there's a huge chance for there to be a sort of reputation or faction system, except it's just not there. I mean, if you wanted to work for a corporation like Militech and become a business partner, or if you wanted to destroy them from the inside, you can't do that. Or what if you wanted to work for the Moxes? And yes, I know there's a side quest with Judy Alvarez and she's technically a Mox and you do a bunch of side quests for her, but I'm saying what if you wanted to work for the actual gang and bosses? Well, you simply can't. And it's such a shame because that could actually directly tie into Judy's quest, which can affect the outcome of it. And then maybe that can affect the finale of the game. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now you may be thinking to yourself like, Mike, I think you're expecting too much, or CD Projekt Red never set out to do this. But really, I mean, the game was being marketed as this immersive first-person RPG. And hell, even the main page just says, explore a vast city where your choices shape the story and world around you. But like I've stated, the story doesn't shape up to be something incredibly different based on your choices, and the world moves on just the same. It doesn't perceive you any differently because there's no faction, reputation, or karma system in place whatsoever. And if CD Projekt Red didn't have an intention to have some faction system, why would they make a trailer talking about the fucking gangs in Night City when they're not going to be used for anything meaningful? And you know, I thought to myself, maybe CD Projekt Red didn't set out to do what I'm talking about to begin with. I mean, in the gameplay trailer, they say you're a mercenary that pledges allegiance to no one. But here's the thing, you end up sort of doing that. There's this side character that you can get really close to, and you can even romance them. And in doing so, you become a part of her family. And here's the thing that kind of annoys me. She becomes one of the endings. You can choose to have her help you in the final mission, which affects the ending you get. And as much as I like that ending, it makes me think to myself, why the fuck is she the only option when there's so many characters and factions and corporations in the game? Why is she the only choice? Now, there are two other choices, but they're either pinned to the main quest or pinned to another character. So it doesn't really feel like your own motivation, and once again, it feels predetermined. And here's the thing, you can probably keep thinking that, like, Mike, you're still asking for too much or your expectations are too high. But here's the thing, the game doesn't even reach the length and depth of The Witcher 3. For example, I finished Cyberpunk 2077's main quest along with the side quests attached to it in just 30 hours, in comparison to Witcher 3's 50-hour main quest, along with maybe the other 50 hours of side quests you can do on top of it. And the thing is that I find The Witcher 3 actually has more meaningful consequences depending on the choices you make in comparison to Cyberpunk. And don't get me wrong, I'm not somebody that really cares about having the longest length in history, because here's the thing, I'm somebody that actually prefers short and sweet experiences. But the thing is that when you come from something like The Witcher 3 and then you finish this, it leaves a bit of a sour taste. Now, you can say that the things I'm complaining about are in The Witcher 3 too. I mean, The Witcher doesn't have a faction or reputation system, and yes, I'm aware of that. But the thing is that there was a huge opportunity for it to be here in Cyberpunk since you're not some highly established character. You're just V. It could have been a clean slate. And it's hard not to think about a faction and reputation system when there's all these different corporations and gangs in the game, only for them to not be fully interacted with. I mean, you start to question where the time and money went into this game. I mean, visually the game looks really good in terms of its art direction and graphical fidelity. Then again, I'm speaking on the PC version. If you're playing on PS4 and Xbox One, all I can do is apologize because you're practically playing a game that has like 2-minute intervals to load assets and plays at a frame rate comparable to an N64 game. In other words, they fucked up and released a broken product. so I'm really sorry for that. But on PC, the game looks great. And then in terms of sound design, it's good too. I mean, I really like the voice acting, I like the way the weapons sound, I like the cityscape, the music's pretty damn good too, and I'm pretty sure they got like top artists to make songs for the game, so that must have been expensive. And hell, they have fucking Keanu Reeves playing a role in the game, so that must have been crazy too. But what about everything else? Because there's actually a few things in the game that can definitely be improved or are just sort of mediocre. I mean, for one, the driving feels pretty subpar. I mean, you kinda get used to it, but vehicles either feel too slippery or too heavy. It's kinda hard to find an in-between. Most of the time, it just feels like you're driving a boat on fucking land. It just doesn't feel good. And then, what about the AI in the open world? Well, what AI? The NPCs are brain dead. You can throw a grenade in the middle of traffic, and instead of people driving away or running in fear, they'll kneel down and wait for themselves to die. And then, what about the police? Well, once again, what fucking police? I mean, you can commit terrible crimes. You can run over 10 people, piss on an orphanage, and kick a puppy, and the crime will be reported, but you can literally run down a block and lose the police completely. And I'm not even exaggerating here. I killed a group of police, and then I ran down a block, and I just lost them. So it makes you wonder what they really spent their time and money on. And you want to know what I think they spent it on? The marketing. My god, did they spend so much time showing and talking about this game. It seemed like every month, week, or second there was a new video about it. I was half expecting them to just stream the entire game on fucking Netflix. I couldn't believe it. But that's another thing, the marketing. This game was being marketed as an RPG for quite a while. Hell, its first ever gameplay video, if you look in the description, it says that Cyberpunk 2077 is an open world RPG. Yet on the Steam page, it says open world action adventure, and it says the same thing on GOG. Yet when you look at tags, it says RPG. It's almost like they didn't know what they actually wanted to do with this game, or things just had to change and they couldn't complete what they actually wanted. By what I'm saying, you might think I actually hate this game, but I don't, because I really like its world. I really like what it sets out to do. I like its characters. I like the stories and stuff. It's just, I wish there was more choice and meaningful systems and interactions in place, because it just feels a bit hollow. And that's the thing. That's the feeling I got. Because the hours I spent on this game, and I would play for hours on end, I'd even lose track of time. But the more I spent with the game, the more hollow I felt. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things they need to improve in terms of like AI and like driving and just overall polish. But when it comes to just the base game and the amount of choices and stuff like that, I don't think they can really change that. It's just how the game is. Maybe the DLCs will improve and like add a lot more, but right now I just think so much more could have been done for this game, and I'm just a bit disappointed in it. So all I can say is really this: if you just want an open world game where you want to invest your time into an interactive story, as well as being able to play around with different builds, then I think the game is pretty damn good. But if you're looking for an immersive RPG, and having choices comparable to games like, let's say, Fallout New Vegas, it's just really not here. I think this game as an RPG is a bit bare, and so much more could have been done with the source material. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Peace.